Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Build Tech evening. Today, we're going to be talking to you about interaction design and UX testing. We have a wonderful lineup for you today. My name is Sanne Visser, and I'm your host for this evening. I would like to welcome everyone and invite you to just pop in where you are in the world, pop that in the chat there, let us know what your role is. We'd love to get to know you a little bit as we have a fantastic evening together. So today we'll be talking about how to set up a test strategy that includes a lot of the front end. So we'll be looking with Diederik Lammerse at the tool TestCafé. It's the only cafe that's open during lockdown. And with Kimberly Snoyl, we'll be looking at UX testing, and we'll end the evening with Diantha Boll, who's going to take us through some interaction design examples, and those are truly fascinating. So it's wonderful to have you all here. And without further ado, let's have Diederik on the screen, please.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Diederik. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, really good.
Ready to go?
Yeah, I am.
So you're the one that set up this talk today about the only cafe that's open during lockdown. So we're really looking forward to that. Like, how much beer will there be, Diederik?
Sorry, I tried to put in some functions which contain beer, but actually they didn't work. So no beer for tonight, but it's still called a cafe.
All right, wonderful. Well, I hope everyone has some snacks at home and some drinks ready to go. Take it away, Diederik.
Thank you, Sanne. So, like Sanne said, I'm going to talk a bit about the test strategy and also about the tool TestCafé, the only cafe which is open during lockdown. So let's see what it will bring us. I'm Diederik Lammerse. I'm started at Capgemini in 2012 as a young professional, like the other speakers tonight. We all started as young professionals, and I'm kind of known for the test automation and the agile testing. So that's where people find me for. Next to that, in private life, I also like to do some mountain biking. Here on the left side, you see me in the snow a few weeks ago when it was snowing. The biking was really nice. And I also, next to doing mountain biking, I also I'm part of a folklore dancing group. And currently we have been Dutch champion of Turkish folk dancing here on the right. And then this is me here. So yeah, Dutch champion Turkish folk dancing. Did you know it existed? Tonight, I'm going to talk you through the upcoming agenda items. First, I will talk a bit about the test strategy, then how TestCafé can help us in that, because we see certain things which are a bit more difficult to implement. And what's a tech talk without any technical things? So I do a demo on TestCafé and how to test components in that. So let's start with some strategy. Maybe you know, in 2008, Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory came up with distribution, how to put in all the different tests. We have loads of tests. You see them here on your screen, but how to organize them a bit. So they came up with the testing quadrants. And in the testing quadrants, it says, yeah, let's put supporting the team and critiquing the product on one of the axes, and a technology-facing, more technical test, a more business test on the axis. And then we can make a nice organized view in it. So let's go quickly through them. Then we see that in quadrant 1, we see the unit test. They're technical, and they're and also component tests we see here. So they're technical and they're really helping the team. Quadrant 2, we see functional tests, which is not always a clear, at least functionally testing your application. But sometimes functional test also means end-to-end test. So okay, there's some lost in translation sometimes there. But we see also here example testing. If you what happens if you put in different inputs, A/B testing, and user experience testing. So this is all really helping the team to check if their product is right. If we then go to more critiquing the product, we come up with exploratory testing, really trying to break your application or break someone else's application, and also check out the usability and the user acceptance testing. So more critiquing the product here. But still, this is business facing, like the functional test there. Then if we go to quadrant number 4, which is technical and critiquing the product, we see there the performance testing, security testing, and other quality attributes. This is not a complete list. This is just the ones I would wanted to fit in for tonight, but there are way more kind of testing. Diantha and Kimberly are going to talk tonight in the other sessions about user experience testing, exploratory testing, usability testing, and also about how to test other quality attributes. I am going to talk a bit about how to combine the different functional tests, the unit test, the component test, and more end-to-end functional test, and how to combine them. We see that these tests are all really helping the team to check if their product is the thing is in shape. So that's where I'm going to focus on. So it's really about supporting the team in that sense. Okay, so if we put these different types of tests together, how should we do that? For that, we have the testing pyramid, and a testing pyramid tells us it's a pyramid shape, so it tells us do a lot of unit testing, don't do that much of component testing, integration testing even less, and only a few of graphical user interface end-to-end tests. Why do we have a pyramid, and why is it not a rectangle? Because the higher you come in the pyramid, it's slower, and it's also more brittle. So it's really important. If you make too many UI tests, then you will end up with slow tests and brittle tests. And that's the reason that we should have more of these lower unit and component tests. So, but next to slowness, we also see that you have high cost to develop them and maintain them. The possibility of false negatives will increase the higher you come in the testing pyramid. And also the good things are you can cover the whole application here, and you can also it's really how the end user see it. So it's still useful to do some testing here. And since maybe because of these two reasons, you see that some teams will put not really implement a testing pyramid, but more like a testing what's this, Christmas tree, or what's this, a testing umbrella with a strong base. So you see some people have different amounts of these tests, and I'm going to talk tonight how TestCafé can help you to get this component test on the front end really working. So we're really going to focus on the component test here. So why TestCafé? There are a lot of other tools. Maybe the most known tool is Selenium WebDriver, but the tool why TestCafé is a good tool, or at least a nice tool to work with. It's for web applications. Okay, nice. It's JavaScript written, and the good thing about JavaScript is that also the front-end developers most of the time know to write in JavaScript. So as a team, you can work together more easily since you're writing tests and applications in the same language. So that's a big benefit, especially of the teamwork. Also, the automatic waits are handled quite nicely. So it waits automatically if the page is loaded, and if calls are if the information from the APIs is got there. And you can use concurrent test execution out of the box, which you can just spin up 5 browsers only by one simple command, or whatever, how many CPU you have. So, okay, let's have a look on how that looks like. So I've got here the really nice, in my IDE, I've got a test set up. But let's first look at the wonderful app I've got here. Actually, a colleague, Melanie Leeuw, made a really nice app for me. Really simple, but exactly what I need. So you see here the app. It's just one page. You can fill in some names. Always this one, of course, you can fill in here. Okay, yeah, you can fill in also really my spam email address. Nice. And then, okay, we can click one of the save buttons. I make 3 different versions of save buttons. And then you will see you will end up in a different page with a different URL. And it will be empty again. So, okay, let's gonna test this automatically. Always nice to see an automated test running, right? So we're gonna fill in the details, and eventually, yeah, eventually we're gonna click on the next button. We haven't done that yet, and then hopefully we see that that we end up in a simple success page. So if we're gonna put here a click to an on this very button here, how do we do that? We can inspect on it. Okay, it's a bit big now, so let's. Yeah, there we are. Here's the button, and we see it as an ID. ID is native HTML button. Oh, that's nice. There we go. So we need to put in a wait because otherwise it will run all the steps at the same time. So we're gonna click. The T I use here, that's the test controller. So that's something similar to, say, a drive or a browser, what you know maybe from WebDriver. So I'm going to click, and then I'm going to click on a selector. And the selector, there we go. And the selector is this native HTML button. It was an ID, so I can use a hashtag for that. I end up my line, and I guess this is it. So let's see. I run my test. Because you're testing on the UI on the browser, you want to spin up an empty browser. So we see here in the bottom screen, I will make it a bit bigger. We're making a browser here. But it takes a while because the cache needs to be cleaned. It needs to make the connections. But we see it start now. There we go. Luckily, we have this loader. Yeah, so it spins up a browser, empty browser, connects the TestCafé to it, and it will fill in the details, and then it will continue. Yeah, so there we go. And then we do a simple save button, and we check that the URL has success in it. So yes, one task, it's passed. Nice. But however, this is a view app. Where am I? Here I am. Yeah. This is a view app. So if I go back to the nice app here, we see I also created some other buttons, because nowadays it is handy sometimes to work with web components to isolate some CSS and to make web development easier. So let's see if we can also do the same thing for a save button here. So this is a save button component. It's a button component. So here we see web component button. Okay. So we just replace it. Because it was also ID, we can do this. And yeah, I can tell you this is not working. Why is this not working? I execute it now, but the problem is it runs the component. You cannot access the component immediately, and you need to move to the component and to first dive into there. So that's nice for front-end developers to make web pages like this. But it's not so nice for the testers maybe, because they cannot just use these easy selectors. So that way it's a pity. Let's see what it does. We can fill in a first name, last name, and then we try to find this button, but you see there the big mouse button. Yeah, it cannot find it because the specified selector does not match any element in the DOM tree. If I go there, we see, I'll make it a bit bigger here. We see this button is part of a simple button, which is a web component, and then there's a shadow root. So this is kind of the new root of this component, and then there is this button. So that means we need to do a bit more magic, and we first need to find this simple button. So that means actually, let's make a constant out of that. So we can make a constant. I put my, yeah. So we call it button component, maybe component. And then we say we're gonna selector. Yeah, there we go. But then we need to dive into, yeah, first we need to select, of course, document. We need to select that, how do you call it? The simple button component. So that's quite easy. Simple button it was. Then we need to dive into the shadow root there. And then we need to, in that one, we can continue and select actually we can copy this one. There we go. Okay. So then we have this component here. You see the selector becomes really long. This is exactly what I mean by by that it is not maybe not so easy for the tester or for the people writing the test. And then with this long selector, it should work. So let's check again. So, and that's what I'm going to tell you. This is if we're going full blown with the whole application. However, this simple button is a component. So this component could also be tested separately. So that's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to show you just right after. It's, we see here in the bottom of the screen, it's rendering again. Always nice. I always like to do live demos. There we go. And now we should see. There we go. First name, last name. Yeah, and now it can find the button. Only thing is, the URL is changed to something else. we checked the URL to contain the simple success, and what we actually see is it is expected to have simple but expected simple success here, but it only contains component button success because I have a different name for that. Doesn't matter. So yes, it works like this. But however, we have really this long selector here diving into the shadow root. And now it was only one time a web component. I will show you the other one. Here, this is a save button inside a card component. So, okay, that's even one layer deeper. So the selector would be even longer. So what we can do is we can just first test a component test on the card component. So then you only render the card component. It will look like this. I will have done this on a localhost 8081, so on a different port. And here we have the card component, and we can do already the test on the card component like isolated. So for instance, checking the text on it, if there's any text displayed, we can do that already in the component. So got here my folder structure in the simple card. We see that we have as a separate component, and we have here a test here, which actually just tests this only this component and makes it easier. So really nice. We can just test this one, and then we have the component test done. And with combining all these kind of component tests, we already get a quite good idea if the components of our web page are working. And that means that we have to do less of the integration test where all the components come together, or the end-to-end test. So that's why it's nice to make these component tests and make sure that you already get your information and your quality assessment done on the component itself. Next to that, the component could help us in another way. Since if the component is changed because the component was updated and they changed something in the component, you don't have to update the selector. What you can do, and let's do that. So I don't use this button component now. What we can do is the following. We can just get the selectors which were used in the component. Here's the selector of the component, and we see here there's a nested button component and the simple button component. I will zoom in a bit. Yeah. So since this component button here is written as a variable of the card selector, what we can do is we can just reuse this selector, and in that way also be independent of changes because we just call that selector every time. Let's see how that works. And this way we get the advantages of the components in our integration test. So I don't need to click here. What I'm going to do is I say, okay, I want to click on the simple card component that's defined in the simple card page. And from that simple card page, I want to use the simple button component, which is a function of, because you need to tell in which web component it is. Oh, it is in the card. So yeah, there it is, the card. Okay, so now I actually have here the selector, which is automatically updated, the selector of the button components and also the shadow root in there. So the only thing I need to do is, let me see where to put it here. Oh, this is wrong. The card was not a function. Yeah, here, card. And then I can just say, okay, in this component, I want to find a child, and the child is called, you can check it here. Where is it? You can check how the child is called. The button has ID web component button. Okay, there we go. Web component button. Okay, let me check before I make a mistake. Simple button component. Yeah, this one is there. We put in as a variable that it's part of the card, and then we go in there. And then I expect, let's do that as well. So if I go here, I expect to end up at a page which contains card component success. There we go. It should contain card component success. Let's run it. So another thing on you see now already how many times did I execute this test? To spin up a browser is slow. So try to do as much as possible in your unit test, not only the small functions, but try to get as much as possible in the unit test, since that runs probably a factor 100 faster, maybe 1,000. So that's also interesting, or try to do that to get your pyramid as good as possible. So there we go, first name, last name, email, and the save button, and check the URL. And yes, it passed. So this way we can, one, do component testing, and secondly, be automatically updated if a component is updated. And that's what I wanted to show you in TestCafé. This can be done in other tools as well, but the TestCafé is quite nice and quite new tool to do this with. So let's get back to the PowerPoint. So this way we do this component test, and this way we try to make a complete pyramid which is covering the most important parts of your application in a. This is wrong. This should be this should be slow, guys. So let's go back here. Yeah, this is better. So this is we can do the best way an pyramid, and in this way we have coverage of all the components, or all the components, all the unit tests, and maybe we don't cover everything in integration test and end-to-end test, but that's already covered in the layers below, and that way we have a stable and fast-running complete test suite. And that's actually the whole goal of yeah, I think that's an important goal of being in a team, and that way the team can go faster because we know that the quality is okay of our application and we can assess it automatically really fast. Thanks for listening. Let's see if there's any question about this. Hey, Sanne. You're still on mute, I guess. I see a sign which says mute. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Diederik. So there's more people that are also mountain bikers than that are also into folk dancing. So that's one thing that popped out there. Edwin R., actually a fellow mountain biker, has a question for you. So he's asking, using the shadow route, is that a bad or a good thing? Could you speak to that?
Yeah. The shadow route is if you do want to do good development, or actually modern development, it's a good thing because in the shadow route you can really isolate CSS, which means that if you kind of combine things on a page and you try you change something in a button on the in a button, maybe the button is not the best example. If you change something in a label at the bottom, then you don't want that label CSS to be changed somewhere else. And by using shadow routes, you can make sure that this is not happening. So it's a good practice. However, it makes the life of a tester a bit more difficult.
Ah, got it. Is another question here from Sven van Stralen, and I had the same one actually. How does TestCafé fit into a CI/CD or any kind of pipeline? Or if that's too broad, how did you do it in this project where you use TestCafé?
Yeah, now this was just a sample project for this talk, but
Yes, I
in
understand.
my but in my daily life, yeah, TestCafé can just be put and can be run because it's a node module, so you can just run the test and put it in any pipeline really easily. And it like what I did now, you can build it locally, for instance. Then you can do first some local tests to check if your UI is doing the right thing. And later on, you can even go to connected environments where the UI is connected to an API. So it's really easy to connect in a pipeline. However, is it easier than other apps? Yeah, it's doable, but I think like Selenium WebDriver or Protractor, of course, is also easy to put in a pipeline. So it doesn't have a benefit there, but it works really nice in a pipeline.
All right. Well, there's actually a question there about comparing it to Protractor. You yourself mentioned Selenium a few times, but there's also tools that we know like Fitness and Cypress. Could you give a little bit of an overview how TestCafe fits in? Is it a free tool? What's the licensing like? Or how was
Yeah,
this comparison go?
TestCafé is like a lot of other of the just mentioned tools is free as well. So it's a community tool, and a lot of people use it. So it's updated, and there's nice documentation on their GitHub. DevExpress. You can find it, just type in TestCafé without a space, and you will find it on Google really easy. Yeah, if you compare to the other tools, it has somewhat. The other tools are nice as well. So, for instance, Cypress has really good integration and is probably a bit easier to use. However, TestCafé, like I said, has the benefit that yeah. So the JavaScript thing is a good thing about that you can work together in a team. So that's a nice thing about TestCafé. But I would say if you choose a tool, just see how your team is looking and how your application is looking, and then you can choose a tool on that. So I would not say that TestCafé is per se always the best tool for your team. However, it's a really good fit in my team.
Right, so you look more for the fit with the stack you already have and the people you're working with to select a tool, of which TestCafe is then a good option.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, thank you so much. That's it for questions for now. Thank you so much, Diederik. I'll see you back at the end in case any more last minute things pop up. Thank
Yeah,
you for a
great.
wonderful
Thanks for the questions,
presentation.
and nice to have. Thanks that I could be here.
Great. Bye. All right, folks. So we have a little bit of a programming change here, which we announced on the meetup page, but we didn't quite get around to changing on the Twitch and YouTube channel. So we're switching the order of Diantha and Kimberly as originally published. We will first have Kimberly with her UX testing. She'll show us a presentation for about half an hour, and then we will go to Diantha, and she will round us off for the evening. So for now, Kimberly, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Anna.
Are
Nice
you
to be here.
ready?
Yes, exciting as always, but I'm ready.
All right. Now, Kimberly has given this talk before. She's been accepted at many great conferences with this exact speech.
Many.
So you guys are in
Two.
great hands. Yes, many. So go ahead, take it away, Kimberly.
Thanks, Anna. Yes, there are my slides. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Kimberly Snoyl, and I'm a UX designer since the 1st of January. And before that, I was a software tester for 6 years. My background is in human media interaction at the University of Twente, and now it's called interaction technology because I did it like 7 years back. And of course, I'm working at Capgemini, as you can see here. Click. I'm gonna wait before it goes too fast. Oh, yeah. Well, a little bit about myself. Well, just told you my background. I'm 32 years old. I'm also the founder of Ladies at UX Utrecht, the first logo you see here. Ladies at UX is a bigger community. Some of you might know it. It started in Manchester in 2013 and has since popped up in about 50 cities all over the globe. And I started the chapter in Utrecht. And I've been doing that since 2016. I'm also the guild master of the Usability Testing Guild within Capgemini. And now we call it the UX Guild because it's more than just usability testing. We also focus on accessibility testing, and now, as I will discuss in this talk, user experience testing. Also, I'm the founder of the Test Jam. You might also have heard of that. We're also here on Meetup. Yeah, we've been doing Test Jam since 2017, and there will be a new edition this year. So keep your eyes on the Meetup page. Okay, what I'm going to talk about today, UX testing in Agile development, as the title is of my talk. I will first tell you something about the problem that I want to tackle. I will tell you about the many quality attributes of testing and which one, of course, we will focus on. Some UX testing examples, and last but not least, techniques you can use to really test user experience in your applications. Okay, so as Diederik has just shown you something about how to test the front-end applications, the focus on testing is a lot on the functionality, which is of course not weird, because we have to what we are making has to work well. It has to function, and sometimes they also call us functional testers. Yeah, it's very well known that testers really test functionality. And also the test automation, as Diederik just shown us, is really booming. Test automation is the way to go. If you want to go into testing, you have to know everything about test automation. But I think actually the focus is too much on these things, because testing is not only functionality and test automation. And I want to steal a little bit from the Agile Manifesto. Not as what they have here, individuals over processes, etc. But I want to state user experience over functionality, because you can have good working functionality. It can work like a charm for you, but when a user uses your website, it may be confusing and they don't understand how to use your website, and it may take many steps to finally reach their goals, while it could have been done. It could have been made simpler if you take the user into account. Okay, so yeah, these are a lot of quality attributes in testing. As I just said, we focus a lot on the first square here: functional completeness, functional correctness, functional appropriateness. But there's so many, and I want to focus on usability. So how you can use the product, and if it's user friendly, is it easy to use? Can you reach your goals efficiently and effectively? Is it clear? And yeah, as you can see, we have to do so many things. We have to, as testers, we have to focus on so many quality attributes, as you call these things. But in agile development, you have a sprint of only 2 weeks. So in these 2 weeks, you have to do a lot. You have to plan your tests. You have to write the tests. You have to test them. You have to retest. Also, you have to make sure that everything you tested the previous sprint and the sprints before that are still working as well, because there can be regression. When new functionality is made, it can be broken when the previous functionality can be broken. So that's why we use test automation, as Diederik just showed us. You have a testing pyramid. You can do unit testing up to end-to-end testing. But this is also some time you need to invest in your sprint for this test automation. And this all has to be done in 2 weeks. So I do understand that the client and also we as testers, we have to prioritize. So in testing, you make your test cases in advance, and you think, okay, what are the risks? What is the most important thing I have to test? Because when it doesn't work, we will lose money, or the people cannot reach their goals. So that's why, of course, it must function. The functionality must work well. But as I just said, user experience will get left behind, because people think, okay, you can use it. It can be more effective and efficient, but let's do that in the next sprint or when we have time. So the business might say it's a nice to have. We'll do it someday. And of course, in Agile, fast, a lot of functionality has to be built, and the nice to haves, we just never get to that. So what can we do that doesn't require so much time? First, I will give you some examples of what kind of things do you need to think about when I'm talking about user experience testing. And after that, we will go into which techniques, of course. These are some examples that I have come across in my my daily life. This, for example, I don't know if anyone of you know this app. It's Optimal Eurosparen. I'm Dutch, and I really love saving things. So when you buy Optimal or Chocomel or some kind of milky product, I think it's from Campina. I don't know, but anyways, you can. There's a code here which you can enter in the app, and then you can get some points, and you can buy stuff with discount. So this app, I really like it. On the box of the Optimal, there's a code, and the code is in caps lock. So the first time when I use this app, I really pressed this shift button to make my letters caps lock. But after a while, it took me some time that I noticed that if I don't press caps lock, still the letters are in capital. So yeah, it works well. It's good that the letters are automatically capitalized, but the feedback to the user is not so good, because it would be nice if the user knew upfront that when you when you want to fill in your code, that you don't have to think about, oh, is it caps lock or not, that you just see that the capital letters are highlighted, and you can just start typing. That would be nice. Not highlighted, but shown. Just like when you have a numeric field, sometimes with the postal code, when you want to type, you see on your phone, the postal code is already, the numeric keyboard is already there. That's thinking with the user, making it easy for them. I really like that. This is another example. I have a little movie of zooming. I'm getting older nowadays, 32, and I see that I really start zooming a lot. So when I have a picture like this, I'm like, okay, what's actually what am I reading here? I want to zoom in, but when I zoom in, sometimes the thing I want to zoom gets smaller instead of bigger. And notice this a lot of times. This is just on Google, and of course, I understand everything else gets big, but I wanted to focus on this. So maybe this is not the best example, but sometimes I have it also with some PDF viewers, that the thing I want to focus on and I want to enlarge, that gets smaller and the rest gets big. So please, when you're testing, always make sure for accessibility purposes that you can zoom into 200% at least, because there are people, older people like me, for example, that when that your eyes just get worse when you age, and you just start zooming. It's going to happen to all of us, and maybe for some of us it's already happened. So take that into account. Let me see, will the next one come? Oh, I have to yeah. And this is the next example. I just moved to the Meren, and my son is 2.5, and he was on daycare in Vleuten. But now I think it's not so far away, but I would like to get him closer at home, so I don't have to bike through the snow again like a few weeks back. So I had this form which I had to fill in from a Coco daycare. And as you see here, okay, I have to say in this example that later on I saw that it worked correctly, but the contrast is very low. And on the screen I was using, I couldn't see it, but on another screen I could. So people of Coco, if you're here, or people who worked on this application, it actually does work, but the contrast is low. So the contrast could be a little bit better. But let me show you this movie. So you see there are 6 steps, and in the 6th step I had to fill in an email address. I zoom in a little bit. Where is the field? Click, 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 click. Where is the field? I cannot start typing. Ah, there is it. And it's very far away from the label. So this, again, it's contrast. It is a light gray when you put it on another screen. But yeah, you have to take into account that people might have a bad sighting, so they just don't see the contrast, or their device is bad. So make sure the contrast is better, or just make the field very big. So when you click on email address, you already have it highlighted. That's one of the solution you can have. Do I have another example? Those were it. So these are some small examples from my daily life. They're just small things, but that's the thing about user experience. When it's there, you don't see it. You don't see how easy it is to use. And when it's not there, you get frustrated. And this is just what you don't want. You don't want people to get frustrated. You you don't want them to think, what am I supposed to do? Where is the field? You don't want them to get confused. You want the experience just to be simple, easy. Just let them go on with their lives, and don't make them spend too much time on completing a task that they have to do. So this is a book, a recommendation, Steve Kropp, Don't Make Me Think. I really like it. And this is a phrase I think about constantly when I have such an issue like on the Coco form. Where is it? What do I need to do? I even went back to the form to see how I filled in the other 6 fields, because it's a form. So I filled in a lot. And at the end, I couldn't fill it in anymore. But then on that form, I went back to step 1 and I lost everything. So I was so frustrated. I had to fill in the entire form again until the end. So yeah, that wasn't necessary if you just make it simple in the first place. Okay, zip. Okay, so these are some user testing techniques I want to discuss. So how can you test user experience? It's something that you don't hear a lot about, and that's why I came up with this talk, because we learn a lot about functional testing, structured functional testing, but not a lot about user experience testing, since it's not high on the backlog, but I think it's very important. So I'm going to discuss some techniques you can use which are fast, like a checklist, and you can just implement them in your sprints. And it doesn't have to take up a lot of time. You just need to be aware that these heuristics, for example, are there. So for example, you have here, you have 10 heuristics from Nielsen and Norman. These are the gurus from user experience and usability. They're very well known in the user experience world, and these standards are also very well known. And when you look at them, they are quite logical, but it's good that you have this list and you can implement it in your tests. You can have them near when you just want to know, okay, what should I think about when I want to test my application? I will highlight some of them, not all of 10, but just to give you an idea of what these heuristics are. For example, the first one, visibility of system status. It's just simple as we see every day in Google Docs or Drive, that when you're uploading something, you see that it's being uploaded, and here at the bottom you also see one uploading or 1 of 5. You know what the status is and what the application is currently doing, or something so simple like a spinner. When you're waiting for information to be loaded, there's a spinner, something simple as that. And you might be surprised of how many times it is forgotten, at least in the first round. When you're as a tester developing an application, the first time you might see, hey, what's happening? And then you have to wait for the information to come. Then you can tell your developer, okay, we need a loader. I also recommend this website, 10 usability heuristics with examples. This example I got from this website, but I also have some of my own. Okay, the next. Second heuristic is a match between system and the real world. These are things like a stop sign, red, orange, and green. These are conventions we know. Red is bad, green is good, and yellow is something in between. So use them. These same colors. Don't use red for something that's good in your product. And also a UX thing. Don't only use colors. That's also something that has to do with accessibility. People who are maybe colorblind, they don't see if you only make text red. For example, here on Meetup, you see this green check mark. People, so many men, how was it? A lot of men, like 30% of the men are colorblind, or I don't know, 30, but it was a lot. They don't see red and green. So don't make your things you use, don't use color for important information, and always use a color and something else, like an underline or a text to make clear what you mean. The second example is I wanted to let you see the home button. Home is also something from the real world when you want to go back home, back to the base, and that is also the home button in a mobile app. Go back to the beginning, and you see that 50 people were going to this event today. Okay, here's also another example: user control and freedom. I really like this from Gmail, that when you send an email, you can cancel it. So when you're looking at your email you send, and then you're like, oh my god, I forgot something, or yeah, you have to add something, you can undo the sending. And that's something that wasn't always there. It's there for a really short time, maybe already a couple of years, but it hasn't been there always. So when you're sending a message, you can undo. Really cool. That gives users the freedom. Yeah, you feel in control of the website, and that gives you a good feeling as a user, and not that you're how do you say that? Subordinate to the website, that it makes the decisions for you. No, you make the decisions. That's what the people want. A third heuristic, consistency and standards. You see here that the home button is usually, or in this case the logo button, is usually on the left hand side of the website. H&M does it in the center, but Nielsen and Norman did a study that when the home button is on the left side, so here they conducted a study where the participants were asked to make a purchase on an e-commerce website and then come back to the home page. And when the home page is on the left side, 4% made a mistake, or they couldn't find the home page. And when it's centered like H&M does, 24% couldn't find the home page. So that's yeah, quite a difference, 20%. So the convention is use it on the left and be consistent in that. Yeah, also the naming conventions, things you always use in real life, keep using them on the website, and don't use two different names, but keep the same convention or the same name on different part of the websites. Consistency, as simple as that. Another website which I can recommend, UX Gorilla, they give from each heuristic, they give the explanation. Okay, another technique. So we're done with the heuristics for now. Another technique I would recommend is using personas. A persona is in user experience really common. It's a fictional character which represents your target group. So if you have a very broad target group like bol.com or something, everybody, every kind of people, young and old, should be able to buy books there. Maybe not children. But for games, for a child's game for children, your target group is a child or different children, maybe different ages, and also different genders. So you can fit these people in a persona, so you don't forget who you're designing for and who you're developing for. And my problem with personas, you have different young, old, male, female. My problem with personas is that I've worked in testing for 7 years, and actually I never really used the personas. In some companies I worked for, the personas were on the wall in the time when we were, of course, still in the office, but I didn't have a reason to go to the wall. And the first time I gave this presentation, someone from the audience came with a very good solution to this, is use your personas in your user stories. So, for example, you have Charles here, he's 55, and for example, he has to zoom in a lot. So, because he can't see very well, as Charles, I want to be able to view the page, blah, blah, blah. But you don't need to uh, tell your team everything about Charles, because your team knows Charles. They can go back to the persona and they know, hey, Charles has an issue with zooming with his eyes, and he also always wants to zoom. Let's not forget to make this functionality work for Charles as well. And so it's implicit in the user story when you say Charles. I really like that idea of Kiki. And the last one, exploratory testing. So exploratory testing is a testing technique also for functional testing, which is very well known in the testing world. Normally we use we have a structured way of testing. So we see which kind of techniques we want to use. For example, for a form, we want to have the syntactical test, for example, or different diagrams. You can use different kind of structured testing. But for exploratory testing, you don't need a script, and that's very nice. Anyone can do it. And what I like about exploratory testing, you can do it with the entire team. And I've done this with multiple teams I've worked in, that we just have a exploratory testing Tuesday, and not do an entire day, of course, but only 1 hour of the day, for example, or 2 hours. You take the time with your entire team and you just test without a script. Everyone does their own thing. And you can also have a theme for exploratory testing, like usability. Everybody checks usability, or maybe security, or another quality attribute you want to test, performance, for example. So exploratory testing is a nice way to get the team together on one page, and you always get new bugs out of it. Maybe they're small bugs, but you always get some new information. So I recommend you do this this week or next week or next sprint, just 1 hour with your entire team, and have an exploratory testing session. It's really nice. Okay, so that was it. These are my key takeaways. So don't make your users think. I have the book from Steve Krug in there for you, so please look it up. Just make it easy for them. Use the usability heuristics. You can use them as a checklist. So when you have a website, just check all those 10 heuristics and see if your application or your website is user-friendly. You can use the personas in your user stories, which I actually still have to start doing, but I think it's a really good thing. And exploratory testing sessions with the entire team. That's it. So, any questions? Thank you for your attention.
Wonderful, Kimberly. Thank you so much. Yeah, have a well-deserved sip of water there. Well done.
Thanks.
By the way, if you call yourself old, then I'm in real trouble. So that's maybe a bit early on your side there. But I get the zooming in thing, but it's usually just being detail oriented. It's definitely not
maybe
for being old.
Okay. Sorry, for the young people amongst us, zooming can also be important.
All right, I have a couple of questions for you. The first one from Xmile, which you partly answered when you said the question is, when should you do this type of testing? Now, you briefly said exploratory testing sessions are a good one.
Yeah.
Is there any other place you would insert this type of testing?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question, because normally, of course, a user experience needs to be done prior to building the application, and this talk is about in the development sprint, in the development phase. So if you have a user experience designer on the team, the need for this testing will be less. That's true. So if you trust your user experience designer, there will be a user-friendly design which has been tested with real users in usability testing sessions upfront. But in some cases, you don't have a user experience designer. And I had it, for example, in Mendix projects when everything should already be user-friendly within the code. So then I think it's important that we as testers or developers or something else in the team, another role, take this this user experience role on us. And then you can do it whenever you start testing for every functional user story. Think about it. So when you start making your test cases, or when you see the application in the refinement sessions, already think about it. You have this head on the entire time, the UX head.
All right. That's awesome. I have another question here from Wim Zayer. He's asking about something called a cognitive interaction. Is this something familiar to you? It's asked in reference to designing a website.
Maybe he means a cognitive walkthrough. Cognitive walkthrough, that's also a well-known technique you can use. But yeah, it's a little bit like gebruikersacceptatietest, user acceptance test, that you really have a script. You know, go to this, do that. I really it's not my preference actually, but because yeah, when you already give a script to someone else, they already know how to use the website. So I would leave it more open. But you can look a cognitive walkthrough up. That's also a very well known usability testing technique.
All right.
Can you name some things I need to watch out for when designing a website?
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the examples I just mentioned. Yeah, it can have a lot of more examples, but use it as a user. Try to not be biased because you were there at the refinement and you know what the I don't know the English word, but you know what the bedoeling is. How you say it in Dutch? In English? Yeah, what the intention is. You know what the intention of the functionality. And yeah, sometimes you forget to look at the functionality with eyes that don't know what the intention is. Yeah, so try to keep it as simple as possible. Maybe you can count the steps someone needs to take to get to their solution, to their endpoint. Yeah, and some of the examples I thought, and there's also accessibility testing, which can be a whole topic of its own, which are also a lot of acceptance criteria you can test. But that's for another time. Or find me on LinkedIn.
All right. Now, there was a quick question also from Nayun Young, which was how many times do you conduct usability testings? But I think you answered that. It's like try and keep that hat on.
Yeah. I think this question is a very good one that you said, Nayung. Nayung, I also know her via Ladies at UX. But usability testing, I want to make clear, I'm not talking about usability testing in this presentation, because that is really, when I think about usability testing, I see, you know, the whole setting with someone in a room and they will use your application and there's someone who will ask questions and people are behind the two-way mirror. So that's not what I mean, because that's really something that designers do. And it's also good to do it, of course, especially when they're not designers in the team. But it takes more time. And I don't think that really fits in a sprint. And unless you make a user story for it and you really make time for you to do usability testing.
Yeah, so
but you have to do that as early as possible. Sorry.
Yeah, so to sum up, you're saying usability testing is very valuable, especially in the design phase, and do try and do it there. What I'm talking about in UX testing is adding it to a development sprint and keeping it top of mind as you're moving through a 2-week sprint.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you so much. That's it for questions, although you can reach Kimberly anytime at her email address that she showed there or on LinkedIn. You can keep this chat coming as well. She'll pop back in at the end and answer any more last minute questions. Thank you so much, Kimberly.
Yeah, thank you too. Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gents and gentle people, we're here for the last event of the evening, but certainly not the least. I would like to now welcome Diantha Boll, and she's going to take us through what we just talked about, interaction design and usability testing, which is her cup of tea. Diantha, you are still on mute, so if you just want to quickly unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yeah. Hi.
Welcome. Hi.
Thank you. Hi.
All right. So you're going to introduce yourself, so take it away, Diantha.
Okay. then I will look for my presentation. There it is. I hope everyone can see it. It might take a few seconds to load properly, but I hope it will all work out. Yeah, so I will talk to you about user experience in practice. And let's see if this works. Yeah, I'll first quickly introduce myself. I hope that this is going away. Sorry for that. Yeah, my name is Diantha Boll. I'm a senior user experience designer at IDN, and I'm currently living in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and I'm 29 years old, for those of you who are interested. And over the last years, I gained experience at Rabobank, where I'm currently working on projects, at the Dutch Food and Safety Authority, or the NVWA in Dutch, and Tata Steel, for example. And for those of you who are not familiar with IDN, we are a part of Capgemini, and we are a global studio, we have 22 studios all over the world, which makes us pretty global, I would say. And before diving into the case that I want to show you, I would like to discuss the IDN design framework. So this, you can say this is a basis of a user experience process. And at IDN, we divide it in 3 phases. So you have the discover phase, the define phase, and the refine phase. And in the discover phase, you basically look at the context of your problem. You collect data, maybe you have qualitative data, quantitative data, whatever you can find that is related to the design problem. And with everything that you collect, you go to the synthesis, where you combine and actually create a design brief, which is the starting point for the define phase. Because in the define phase, you start exploring. You make sketches, you make a prototype, high fidelity, low fidelity, both. Everything that works for you to explore the idea. And when you found, or when you're at some point that you think, okay, this is the best I can get, then you start the validation process, where you do a usability test, for example. So you start to look together with users, like how do they perceive it? What is their experience with the prototype that we have right now? You can do this several times. It's not necessarily a linear process, but to make it easier, it's linear here. So after the validation, you get to the core concept, and after the core concept, you start to refine. So you can, maybe there's a new technique, so you need to change it again, or there is a new look and feel, so you need to update it. So that's basically what you do in the refined phase. And to refer to the quadrants that my colleague Diederik was also referring to, for now I can be either in Q2, but I also realized that I can be in Q3, even though I only highlighted Q2 here. But we will see about that later. Okay, so what I wanted to show you today was a case study, because I have been working at Rabobank for a while now, and one of the projects that I've been working on is the flow for Ideal payments. And for those of you that are not familiar with Ideal, Ideal is the most common and trusted online payment method in the Netherlands, and it's very important for banks to have it in place correctly. So this was the current state when I started working on a project. So what we see here is the first screen that you enter after you make a payment. So for example, you buy something on bol.com, which is a very known Dutch merchant. You enter the banking app here. You go to a screen where you see a summary, which you can sign. You get a native pop-up, and then you get a summary again. So that was the state when I started the project. So what we knew from the start is that the European Central Bank required a shorter Ideal flow for banks, and the screens were actually quite outdated in comparison to the rest of the app of the bank. So with that, we actually had a design brief. We also looked at other things. So for example, how do users use it? But people are very familiar with it, so they go through the flow very fast without even thinking. So we didn't really get a lot of information there. So for now, we said, okay, let's start with the fact that we have to make a shorter flow and we have to update it according to the new look and feel. So that's how we started the define phase. And from previous experience, I know that in the bank there are a lot of technical requirements, but also that there are quite some legal requirements. So every action of the user needs to be logged somewhere, for example. So it's very important to take that into account. So for this project, it's quite rare maybe, but I first started to ask at the legal department, like, what screens are actually really necessary? And it turned out that we could already leave out 2 out of 4 screens. So that was a great start when you have to make a flow shorter. So that was the starting point for some more exploration, actually. So in the next phase, we started to look at the design library of the Rabobank. So the components that were available, the new fonts, new icons, new colors, maybe even, that we could use in order to make the screen look more up to date. Yeah, and with that, we started exploring, we started iterating. So we first looked at the information that was already there on the screen and we applied it in like the different and new components that were offered to us. After that, we started shuffling like the components, like what needs to be on top. Can we place something else on the top? And as you can see, we also started to play with alignment. Do we want everything left aligned or right aligned, or can we also use the middle maybe? Could be fun. So with that, we eventually came to this screen. And after that, it was actually time for us to validate. So we thought, okay, we explored, this is all the information that needs to be there. We updated it with a new look and feel. And now it was time for us to validate and decide whether it's the right direction we were actually going into. So we set up a user test, and a usability test actually, which meant indeed that we invited people over, we let them go through the flow, and we observed what they actually did. And afterwards, we went with them through the flow again and asked them questions like, what was important for you here? Or what did you mention here? And we did this usability test with a group of 5 users, which is very common in the user experience practice. Different genders, different educational backgrounds, different ages. But one of the requirements that we had was that everyone was familiar with online payments, because for us it was important to test the ideal flow, but not whether they actually knew the concept of paying online. And we had 1 hour with each respondent. And I like very much to do usability testing, because it's always interesting to see what people discover and what they mention. But you might question why we test with only 5 participants, since it's not statistical. Well, this is qualitative data, so it's not quantitative. But as Kimberly also referred to, the Nielsen-Norman group, they did research about how many problems are actually found when you test with an X number of participants. And they found that with 5 participants, 80% of the usability problems were found. And it's always good to remember that if you find one problem in your 5 user group, and you solve that problem, you will probably solve it for many other users more. Yeah, so for now we did the test with 5 participants. And as I just mentioned, it's always interesting to see what people actually notice on the screen and what they don't. So one of the things that we found is that the use of a logo is very important, so that it makes it more trustworthy. They found it great that they could actually see what they were buying. We had no idea that it was so important. And if you use something that they are unfamiliar with, like a name, for example, then yeah, they don't like that so much. And one of the things that we didn't show on this styling page, but people really wanted to see, was the balance on their account, for example. And I found it all very fast, which was great, and probably also logic, because we skipped 2 pages that they didn't really even miss, so that was interesting. So with that information, we started iterating again, and this time we started iterating on like the balance on the account. So how do we want to show that? So here we put it underneath, we put it on the right again, here as well. And yeah, so for now, we said, okay, we're done. We did a couple of tests, more than one. And with the last screen that I just showed, we started to refine, because even though we had like the happy flow, we had a first screen, there are also many other situations. So for example, maybe you do not have enough balance. What do you do then? How do we show that? So we started designing and iterating and refining on those screens as well. You see some iterations here. So we tried like the use of a bottom sheet. We tried red text, we tried notifications, and then the notifications were updated again. Yeah, so that was also an iteration and also a refinement process. And for now, these are actually the ideal screens that Rabobank is currently using. And yeah, so these screens are already refined once. They go pretty fast, since it's a fast-paced environment. And for banks, also legislation changes fast, so they have to keep up to date. So they're currently refining this already. And that is basically all I wanted to show, and I really want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Diantha. Just to clarify for our listeners, Idean is Capgemini, right? We are one company. Do you
Yes,
want
we
to
are.
shortly explain how that works?
Yeah, sure. So Capgemini is, yeah, well, it's an IT consultant, of course. And since user experience is also part of IT, but it's also kind of different, we are our own studio. And but we also do projects together with Capgemini. So like a lot of IT projects also need user experience designers or experts on user experience research or UI design, so we can fly in then.
That's perfect. Now, when you mentioned the banks and the app had to react quite fast, what kind of timelines are you talking about there? Is it a matter of weeks, months? How did this timeline go in the sort of the chunks from design to test to final refinement?
Yeah, well, I think like creating a good basis might take some more time, especially for design, because you want to do it right. And we also knew that other screens would be coming. So for example, like the unhappy screens. So you want to be prepared for the fact that other additional components needs to be there. So we already take that into account in the beginning. And I think for designing, I don't know, it went back and forth with the testing. That it takes some time, of course. I think it took us 2 to 3 months to come up with the basis, and then we iterated also on the, or we made a start with the other flows that would be coming, since we knew that we had to create a unity in all the screens.
All right. So there's a question here from Wim Zijer. Can you talk about what tools that you use when you are refining a design like this?
Yeah, well, I think then, yeah, what tools we use? It's partially, of course, it's development. So we have, as you was just mentioned, the cognitive walkthrough. We do that usually. So when development has something ready, they show it to me as well. Maybe they make a little movie, so I check the design usually, and maybe like the font is different, or the size, or anything that's not as it's supposed to be or intended. So I usually look with them, but like the development teams also have their own tester. So like for functionality, they test on their own, and I'm not really part of that test.
So in terms of making those designs, is there a tool you use to generate those?
Well, I make a prototype.
The image library as well, right? So there's some tooling involved there as well. Maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, so we use the program Sketch, and in Sketch I have the design library or the component library. So this library can both be used by designers as well as developers. So for me, I have it available in my design program, but the developers have it available in their in the tools wherever they are building.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I hope that covers your question, Wim. Otherwise, let us know in the chat there. I have another question for you. You talked about how the team is working and how you were working. Like in terms of setting up a strategy to do this verification or validation of the design, how much interaction was there between you and, for instance, a tester like Kimberly or a team member like Diederik? How does that come together?
Yeah, it kind of depends. I've worked at several companies where they all worked slightly different, of course, but I really think it's important to include developers as well in my work, and also make it a dialogue. So I can design something, but if like there are technical complications and it can't be made, or it takes so much time, then it doesn't make sense to create it. So for me, it's a dialogue. And when I do a user test, I always try to make a summary at the end. So user testing takes a lot of time. So even if we test with 5 users, we're still 5 hours. We need 5 hours only for testing, and then we need to process all the information that we receive. So I usually make a good summary. I discuss it with everyone that went to the test, to check if everything that I wrote down was correct, and they saw the same thing. And then I either present it to the team, or maybe I show it at a demo, because I'm also kind of part of the team.
Yeah, so you really talk to everyone at each one of those points.
Yeah, I really think that's important. They also need to know what users think of their product. It's not only my product.
All right, so there's a final question here from Xmail, and this will be our last one for you today. So he's asking, for 5 participants, do they need to be new participants, or can you use the same users for several test cycles?
It depends, I think. So the important thing is that you don't want users that have too much knowledge of a certain product. So you don't want them to be primed about a product. So this was a very simple application, right? It's not a very complex flow, for design at least. But if you have a flow and it's really about filling in forms, and if a user in the beginning says like, "Oh, I'm very uncertain. I don't know what's going to happen if I press this button," for example, and you test with that same participant again, then he or she will already know more about the product, or what will happen, or what to expect. So then your results will be, not really usable, I would say.
Yeah, it will be influencer unless you're specifically looking for that. So in this case, users familiar with ideal transactions, then you would select for it. Otherwise, no.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Diantha.
Thank you too.
If you'll just stick around on screen, we're going to bring Diederik and Miriam back. Sorry, Diederik and Kimberly back again
Sure.
as well. There we go. There's Diederik. Kimberly, yours.
Hey.
Yeah, there you go. We have sound as well. First of all, dear audience, thank you so much for sticking with us. I know it's getting late and you have all stuck it out till the very end. Well done, you. It's been lovely having you. And of course, I want to thank our wonderful speakers, Diederik, Kimberly, Diantha. You have been brilliant tonight. I absolutely loved it. Even though I'd seen them before in our test run, I enjoyed it all over again. So I'm thrilled and excited, and I hope everyone else is as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. And thank you to
You're
Sanne
welcome.
for leading us.
Yes, indeed. Thank
All
you.
right. So just a few last announcements. This is the moment where we're going to ask you to click the thumbs up. We're going to ask you to like us. Also, good to know, we do keep all these presentations online. You can look them up on our Build Tech website, or you can just stick it into the YouTube channel and follow us there. You can then forward it to all your friends who missed this wonderful evening, who you think should absolutely watch it anyway, and make sure that they get those links. We keep everything up here. You can always revisit and ask us questions as well. So again, if you want to reach out to us, we are actually Diantha and Kimberly and I are on LinkedIn. For Diederik, you're going to have to email him at his @Capgemini email address, and we'll be happy to answer any more questions that you have. Thank you also very much. Final announcement. In 2 weeks' time, we have another Build Tech evening coming up, and I have to go and just quickly look up the title because it's a bit of a tongue twister. So, ladies and gents, 23rd of March, we'll be talking to you about composable commerce with commerce tools. Now try saying that one 10 times fast. So what that's about is that we're going to look at the kind of commerce tools which allow you to customize your commerce experience. In this day and age, with all these new tools, we have smart speakers, we have smartwatches, we have many more channels that we need to do sales on, and it helps to have a very much composable sphere of tools that you can use to set up your sales. So don't miss that in 2 weeks' time. It'll be there on the 23rd of March. We're popping it into the Meetup channel as we speak, so you can sign up for that and tell all your friends. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Have a nice evening. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Bye.
Bye-bye.